The TD Niagara Jazz Festival presents Niagara's Summer Mardi Gras Sessions. Join us online every Tuesday from 6 to 7 p.m. as we bring New Orleans to the north. Direct from the Crescent City, Dancin Man 504, Windex Pete, Christopher Butcher of the Heavyweights Brass Band, and more. Featuring mask making, Cajun cooking demos, musical spoons, second line dance steps, cocktail demos, funky fashion tips, and musical clips. Tune in for these free sessions on our Facebook or YouTube channels, Jazz Niagara. Then we'll celebrate Niagara's Summer Mardi Gras together this summer on July 18th. It's virtually possible. Just watch and see.
Niagara's Summer Mardi Gras sessions are brought to you in part by TD, the City of St. Catharines, and the town of Niagara-on-the-Lake.
Good evening and welcome. My name is Juliette Dunn. This is the TD Niagara Jazz Festival's Niagara's Summer Mardi Gras Sessions, Part 3. Thank you so much for joining in. Thank you for understanding why we needed to not do the show yesterday and to move it to today. So we really appreciate your cooperation for that. I'm going to bring on our guest for this evening. When we decided to do these sessions, as you know, we wanted to do stuff with dancing, all about the culture of New Orleans, dancing and food and the cocktails and the history and fashion. And so we reached out to Christopher Butcher, who connected us to all of these great personalities in New Orleans. And he said Dr. Brice Miller is the best dressed man in town. But he's so much more than just fashion. He's going to talk to us about so much more. I was speaking with him for 2 hours yesterday, and I'm just enamored with this gentleman. He's just fantastic. He is a Grammy-nominated New Orleans jazz musician. He's an educator, a social activist, and a cultural anthropologist. He has his own blog. I think we call it a blog. He'll let you know, or a live stream every day. He's doing it ever since COVID hit. I tuned in today for the first time. It's from 12:15 our time until about 1:30, so 11:15 New Orleans time. And he just talks to the people, and he's the voice of New Orleans. So let me bring on Dr. Brice Miller. Here he is. Good evening, Dr. Brice. How are you today?
How are you doing this evening? How's it going?
Very well. Very well. Wow, you dressed up for the occasion. Thank you.
I wanted to play the part. I hope I didn't overdress.
No, and you definitely don't. Not disappointing for sure. So how are things today down there in New Orleans?
Things are well. You know, firstly, I've been talking about the weather every day since this COVID thing. Mother Nature's feeling so good. She's breathing. And the weather's been phenomenal literally every day. I can't remember a time in my life where I've seen the weather so beautiful literally every day. We had a few rain showers this morning, but outside of that, it's been a beautiful day.
Yeah.
Of course, as you guys know, you guys have probably been watching the news. So, you know, we have a little social temperament taking place here in America throughout the streets of many of our major cities. And that's also here in New Orleans. So there was a big protest yesterday afternoon. They actually stopped the interstate. Not really sure what's going on today, but in my little bubble, in my little world, everything's lovely.
Nice. And I think I heard you speaking about the protest. It was a peaceful one, right? On the interstate there?
Yes, it's in. Good. Yesterday, I want to say it was day 5 of protests here in New Orleans, but they have actually been very peaceful as comparable to what we've been seeing in other cities. So we're fortunate with that. I kind of talked about this morning. New Orleans it's more like a big town in a very small city. So there's like these degrees of separation. And in New Orleans, there's probably about a 1 or 2 degree of separation between someone who knows someone who knows someone. And that's the same thing with our police station, you know, with our policemen here, is that, you know, most people know someone who either they went to school with the police, they live in the neighborhood, they're a family member. We don't have expansive suburbs like other cities also. So many of the police also live within a metropolitan area. So you're neighbors with everyone. So and then we have events like Mardi Gras and Jazz Festival and French Quarter Fest. So these police do details for this. So you're gonna always end up seeing your neighbor So
Yeah.
there's not too much coercion to put an AR-15 in your neighbor's face or in your brother-in-law's face just
Yeah.
because your captain told you should do that. So protests are a little different here in New Orleans and always have been.
Good to hear. Really good to hear. Now, we have a sponsor for this evening. And as you know, there was an accident out here, so I had to do a big detour. I have his video, but I want to take some time to upload it. I also have his slide. His name is Dan Plunkett from Deep Blue Music. So I think I saw a horn in your hand. Did I? How about is it okay if I disappear for, say, a minute and a half? Or what did you have planned with your horn? Or am I putting you right on the spot?
My horn is like my mistress. She's always by my side. So if you want me to play a little tune while you're doing that, that's no problem.
I would love it because it's so important for us to, as you know, to have sponsors. And this gentleman, I'll just tell a little bit. I'm just going to show his slide right now before I show his message. And his name is Dan Plunkett, and his company is Deep Blue Music. He books musicians like yourself and like I do as well. Huge supporter of the arts out here, huge supporter of young and upcoming musicians. And he's been supporting our Twilight Jazz series. Wow, I'm going to say that I think he's in season 4 with our Twilight Jazz series, which is on hold currently because it takes place at Mate Cafe and Lounge, which is a nice little cafe. And so he said the other day, well, since I can't sponsor the next Twilight Jazz series, why don't I sponsor one of your live streamed events? So I said, I think I know just the one for him to sponsor. So he's our sponsor for this evening, and he's recorded a message for us that I'm going to download and then upload. So what's the tune you're going to play, or is it a total surprise?
Well, hey, let's do something that pretty much everyone on the face of the planet recognizes, which is the Saints Marching In. Why not?
And fantastic. Okay, take it away. Thank you. Wow. That's way more than I bargained for right off the bat, Dr. Brice.
Yeah, good old New Orleans medley there.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. So today we're going to talk about New Orleans, about music, about jazz, and then about some funk and fashion. What would you like to start with?
Hey, wherever you want to go, I'm willing to follow.
Okay, well, I've got a few questions for you. So you were born and raised right in New Orleans?
Born and raised, I'm a second generation jazz musician. My dad, Dwight Miller, is a saxophonist, one of the founding members of the Pinstripe Brass Band. Back in 1977, I was 3 years old, just for people who may be wondering. And the Pinstripe Brass Band played a key role in terms of the revitalization of brass bands performing on the streets. During the early 70s, of course, you had funk, you had disco. So the whole tradition of the brass band started waning. You know, younger musicians at that point and younger people at that point in time were not interested in what they call the old folky music. You know, they looked down upon it. And my dad grew up playing music with Doc Paulin's brass band, which was a very famous brass band leader here in New Orleans. So essentially, I literally grew up in diapers alongside my dad at second lines and at parades, etc. And I started out on piano. I have an older brother. My dad made both of us take music lessons. So I started on piano and then I moved to drums. And my dad kept kind of pushing me to trumpet. You know, as a child, eventually you just want to make your dad happy as a son. So I started playing trumpet in the 7th grade. And the rest is almost history. I started traveling with my dad in about the 9th grade. I really took the music seriously. I mean, I really practiced it. When I would come home from school, I would practice Louis Armstrong's Hot 5 and Hot 7. I was also a big Al Herbert fan, you know, and I just took the music seriously and started traveling with my dad at a young age. And that opened up my eyes to like the real world. You know, I mean, I'm in the 9th grade and this weekend I'm in Florida. This weekend I'm doing a festival in California. This weekend I'm doing a festival in Oklahoma. You know, not too many little black boys from the 9th Ward in New Orleans to say they had that experience. And I just recognized the power of music and I just ran with it. And it's something I've been doing my entire life from that point.
Did you ever, so you were touring the US mainly. Did you ever get to tour overseas with your dad? Or I assume, of course, later on you did.
My first overseas trip was, I was 17 years old. I was a senior in high school and we went to Portugal. We went to Portugal and my parent, I went to a private all male Catholic high school called St. Augustine High School. It's one of the premier high schools in America for black boys. And they're known for their marching band and for their football team, but predominantly for their marching band. called the Marching 100, the Purple Night Marching 100s, one of the biggest bands in the city. And my parents had to sign an agreement with the principal to allow me to miss a week of school as a cultural excursion. And that was my first trip. And again, man, my dad was also an avid photographer. So here it is, I'm in Portugal. We went to a bull run. I mean, I was able to, I want to say the sun would go down at something like 1 a.m, and come back up at like 5 a.m.
Wow.
The tide might be, let's say you're standing at the beach side. Let's give, for example, the tide might be 5 feet, but then, late at night, 1 o'clock in the morning, you could walk out maybe 300 feet because the tide is pushed. I had never seen that type of stuff in life before,
Wow.
And from that trip, believe it or not, I actually spent all of my summers in Europe until 9/11.
Wow. After that. Wow.
Yeah.
From age 17 on. Huh. Any favorite
17 on.
Any favorite destinations that you or favorite? I mean, it's one thing, a favorite destination, and then a favorite audience, right? Because audience are going to be different in all different countries. So, yeah. What about like? Have you been to France? Did you get to perform in France at all?
France almost became a second home. I mean, I literally almost every summer I either was in France or traveled through France. And I would probably say the French audience has been one of the most appreciative.
Yeah.
They really, really respect and really, really enjoy the music. And it's probably because we've had so many expats to leave from America, to call France home.
Yeah.
In terms of memorable experiences, I would probably say San Sebastian, Spain.
I've
And
been
it's a place
there.
it's beautiful. It's so beautiful.
Yeah.
And I'm a romantic at heart. And I've always told my wife it's one of the places where I want to bring her, because even as even as a little 20 or 21-year-old, when I was there, it was just something magical about that space, about San Sebastian, Spain. So but I've been blessed to have some amazing experiences. Germany, Istanbul, Turkey. I mean, my hit list left in life is Japan. My dad's been to Japan multiple times. I've never been to Japan, and I've never been to Australia. So those are on my hit list. A few years ago with Delphio Marsalis and the Uptown Jazz Orchestra, I was finally able to get back to the motherland. And we spent 2 weeks in Johannesburg, and that was such a beautiful experience within itself.
I've heard. I haven't been yet either. I've been to Australia. I haven't been to Japan, and there's such the population really digs jazz in Japan. I've heard that jazz artists are kind of treated like gods over in Japan.
Yeah.
And when you were in France, did you ever? So you were mainly in the summer. So you were mainly playing festivals, I assume.
Yeah, the festival circuit.
Did you ever do clubs when you were in France? I worked at a jazz club back in the day in the 90s. Did you ever play a little club called New Morning in Paris?
I would have to go through all my posters to know, but yeah, I mean, we played. Of course, we played several clubs. We, another one of the big things is the cathedrals. The church concerts. Which is just a magical thing. It's a different type of performance, because it's the real hushed and quiet and respectful performance. Where people are just really being appreciative of the music, not so much trying to get up and dance and be engaged and everything like that. But they're just experiences that I have 4 kids, 3 girls and a boy, and my son is 15. He's a little trumpet player. And I'm just constantly trying to coerce him to understand not only the power of music, but just the doors that can be opened because of music. I got a scholarship to college. I didn't want to go to college, but I got a scholarship to college. Even the private high school I went to, I got a partial music scholarship, on top of the academic scholarship. So those were not spaces that my parents could really afford to send me, but because of music, I was able to get through the door. And from that point, I made my own journey.
Wow. Yeah, it's interesting because we were talking about, you were saying how music really has saved your life, right?
Yeah. And I say that because, again, we all know the history of America. We know the urban folklores, and we know the urban traps. And even though I went to a private high school, I grew up in the suburbs of New Orleans. I grew up in the inner city. I grew up in a 2-parent household. My mom's a nurse. My dad was a musician and also worked for Coca-Cola before embarking on his own endeavors in transportation. So I didn't have that hard luck life. I'll never fool anybody and tell them that, because I'm appreciative of my parents for making the sacrifices to raise me. However, I have many friends who the lure of the streets, the lure of the dope game, the lure of the gangs and all that kind of stuff, it pulled them away. But for me, music, and the weird thing in New Orleans is that as a musician, especially like in school, you were a jock. The musician, the band students were the jocks. The athletes were seen as not good enough to be in a band.
Right.
Because
so
yes, because New Orleans is a musical city. So there's second lines on Sundays. There's every event that you have in New Orleans, you have music. You don't have somebody throwing a football or basketball or baseball at a second line.
Yeah.
So you're like a superhero as a musician, and that's something that attracted me, because with my dad as a musician, when we would play second lines, etc., they called him White. His name was Dwight, but his nickname was White.
Right.
And everybody knew my dad. It was aggravating. It was to the point of like, yeah, man, can I have him to myself? Actually, the same way my kids are with me now.
I was just going to say, you did say that, yeah.
Yeah, my kids cannot stand the popularity thing. They hate it. It's like everywhere you go, somebody knows you. But that's how it was when I was growing up. Everyone knew my dad, So my dad was like a rock star to me. He was a superhero to me, because the same way that you looked at, the early days, you looked at MTV and then BET music, and you see Run DMC, whomever, they were rock stars. Everybody wanted their signature, etc. Well, I had my own rock star under my own roof. He was my dad. Everywhere we went, everyone knew him, So that was one of those things that made me say, I'll be more popular being a musician than trying to risk my life playing a dope game. And then all the musicians I knew, including my dad, drove nice cars, lived in nice houses, and rode motorbikes on weekends. So,
So music can be a career.
Exactly.
Nice. Now, for those who don't know what a second line is, could you tell them?
Yeah. So a second line is normally the informal street parade that we do in New Orleans. They're led by a brass band, which is essentially considered the first line. And if you don't know what a brass band is, essentially a brass band is a mobile, fully acoustic jazz band. It consists of a tuba and a sousaphone that plays the bass. There's a trombone or two trombones, separate snare and bass drum, trumpet, one or two trumpets. The trumpets are the melodic instruments. It leads the band and leads the tunes. And then you have woodwind instruments, saxophone, clarinet. Essentially, they color the music. And so the second line goes, they parade throughout the streets. They're normally attached to social aid and pleasure clubs or benevolent societies. But they're also a big part of jazz funerals and things like that. And then the second line is essentially is everyone else who's out there dancing along with the music and dancing along with the band. So that can be both family, friends, strangers, et cetera, et cetera. And second lines have been going on in New Orleans. I will say street performances have been going on in New Orleans. The first reported sounds of what could be considered a street parade was in like 1832, 1833, somewhere in that range. And then there was more of the formalized brass bands in the late 1860s, early 1870s. We started having the actual brass bands, and then from that point, even Louis Armstrong was enamored by the sounds of the brass bands that would parade through his neighborhood and through his community when he was a kid, and that's what attracted him to the music.
Wow! And so, I mean, right now would be the first time then in history that the second lines haven't been happening, would you say? Well, I mean,
first time, yeah.
For this long of a period, right?
What period? It's the first time that the music has been shut down ever. I mean, even during war times, even with Katrina, the moment
I was going to say,
started coming back from Katrina.
Yeah, there was still music.
There was still music, yeah. And actually, it was the Hot 8 Brass Band that did a jazz funeral for a very well-known and popular chef who passed away. And the sounds and story of that jazz funeral was considered the resiliency of New Orleans and the rebirth of New Orleans. That was considered the green light of New Orleans coming back after Hurricane Katrina. So this COVID thing has done something that's been beyond unprecedented. And it's also the longest time that the music has been forced to be quiet in New Orleans. It's been literally 3 months with no clubs, no live performances, no parades, no second lines. Musicians are literally sitting at home, practicing, studying, bored, whatever the case may be. But it's the first, and even for me as a professional, this is the longest I've ever gone without performing.
Yeah.
Publicly.
So how are people handling it? What are they doing to survive this tough time down there? Because I've only been to New Orleans once, as you know, just last year for the first time, fell in love with the city, as I knew I would, but I cannot imagine that city without music. I just can't. And I'm sure most people who've been there and experienced it can't either. So it's really hard for us to fathom a city like New Orleans without music, you know?
Yeah. It's a different place, and for the musicians, it's hard because there's not, and for many people, music is their lives. It's what they do. Even for me, I've been a K through 12 educator, administrator, college professor, but it was about 3 years ago that my wife and I had a long conversation, and it was like, tomorrow isn't promised, and you've been dibbling and dabbling, doing all these other, essentially what I consider my profession. My profession has always been academia, right? Yeah. My music was my.
Oh, we lost you for a second there. Oh, there he's back.
I'm still here. I'm sorry, my phone. Right?
Okay, yeah, okay.
And good. Even though, can you hear me?
Yeah, we can. Yeah. Oh, you're frozen again.
Can you hear me?
Yeah. Can you hear me?
What just happened?
Okay, I'm gonna unplug and plug back in.
I can't hear myself for some reason. 1, 2.
We can hear you. Can you hear me?
1, 2.
You know what I'm gonna do, Dr. Bryce, is I'm gonna show a video and come back. So I'm going to show a video. So Dr. Bryce is just figuring out, this happens, it's live. So if you're just joining us, let me put up the slide of our sponsor. I'm still trying to get our sponsor's video, and I'm having a bit of a technical difficulty because it's in a different format. So that's Dan Plunkett. A huge thanks to Dan Plunkett of Deep Blue Music for sponsoring the event. Once again, we are watching the funky fashion with Dr. Brice Miller, but funky fashion and so much more. Here's the look. And we're going to see if he's back. Can you hear us, Dr. Bryce? Can't hear. Okay, so let's try another video. Can you hear us? No. Okay, so we're going to go back here. So Dr. Brice Miller is an amazing man. If you've already been tuned in, and if you haven't, he's our special guest for this evening. This is the Niagara's Summer Mardi Gras Sessions #3, and what we're doing, called Funkin' Fashion, and what we're doing is we're getting ready for our Niagara Summer Mardi Gras, which is going to happen no matter what on July 18th. If we're in lockdown, we will live stream all of the bands to you. But because we're doing these sessions, you'll know what to cook. You'll know what cocktails to make. You'll know how to do some funky steps. You'll have some funky fashion tips from Dr. Brice. You'll know more about the New Orleans culture. So that's the idea. And fingers crossed, maybe we can have a few people out at the event. We'll do a tentative concert, which will be set up in tents, appropriately spaced apart, and it'll all be very COVID friendly, as it were. So we're going to make it work no matter what. I'm going to bring back Dr. Brice Miller, but here's his promo video. there I am. So I'm still looking for Dr. Brice. He's exited and hopefully coming back. My name is Juliette Dunn, and I'm here on behalf of the TD Niagara Jazz Festival, presenting our Niagara's Summer Mardi Gras sessions. If you've missed any of our sessions, you can go on our Facebook channel, which is Facebook, I should post it actually, facebook.com/JazzNiagara/live. We started off with Christopher Butcher from the Heavyweights Brass Band, who lives down in New Orleans, and he's a Canadian jazz musician, trombonist, and we love him dearly. He's a really great guy, and he's also hooked us up with all of these great people in New Orleans to give us some of their culture, give us some insight to some of their great and richly steeped culture. So we've got Dr. Brice Miller this evening. We had from Vancouver, we had Austin last week, and she showed us how to make masks with things from at home. So each week it's a different theme. There's 9 sessions in total. This is number 3, and I see Dr. Brice backstage. Fingers crossed. Let's bring him in and see if this works. Dr. Brice.
Can you hear me?
We can hear you. Yay! You're back. Excellent.
Somebody called my phone and it completely knocked the mic off. For some reason.
It's okay. It's so funny because yesterday we were chatting for 2 hours with no issues, and this happened last week as well. I did my check with Austin, and then on the day, anyways, it's all good. I'm just impressed we can do this technology anyway. So there you are in New Orleans. Here we are in St. Catharines. It's pretty cool stuff.
I need a drink.
Yeah. See, I've only got my water in the studio. I can't go and get it until after the show. Anyways, so we've talked about the history and the music. We're going to talk about some funky fashion tips. So Christopher Butcher says you are the best dressed man on the bandstand, and I'm pretty sure probably in the whole of New Orleans. So what's your secret?
What's my secret? Firstly, I would honestly say impressing my wife. I would honestly have to say impressing my wife. My wife is kind of the yay nay person, but honestly, my fashion style, I would have to say a lot of it comes from my dad. Nice. My dad was really big on dressing. If my friends would tease me and say that, and I would kind of be embarrassed back when I was in school. My dad dressed like a pimp. He was my dad dressed to the nines no matter where he was going. He had rings on all of his fingers, and it'd be so embarrassing. But he was cool,
Very cool.
He was cool like that. So I would have to say my dad has had a major influence in terms of the way that I dress. I would also have to say, again, I went to a private all-male high school. And our uniform was shirt and tie. So I've been accustomed to wearing a tie since I was in the 9th grade. Also, as a musician, the traditional uniform for brass band musicians and traditional jazz musicians here in New Orleans is black and white. So again, white starch shirt, black starch pants, and black tie. Notice I say it's starched, not just a white shirt, but starched white shirt. So when you combine those things with, of course, trying to and wanting to be, a hip GQ, debonair, chocolate cool cat on the bandstand as a young guy. Many people won't admit it. Miles Davis was one of the few people to admit it. But one of the lures of being a jazz musician is impressing people in the audience, and primarily impressing females in the audience. That's the coolness of being a trumpet player, because the trumpet player, you're always out front. You're always the lead guy. Yeah. So I'm just giving some context so people understand it, right?
This is good, yeah.
Giving context.
Yeah.
So then outside of that, I started my first business, which is my entertainment company that I still run today, when I was in high school.
What's the name? I'm going to post it up for everybody. Actually,
the name of the company is the New Orleans Music Company. The New Orleans Music Company.
Okay, I'm going to put that up. Thank you.
I started as Brice Miller Productions, but essentially, so I was this young guy in high school going to professional business meetings as a kid. I couldn't dress like a kid. My dad always told me that people will treat you the way that you look. If you go to a bank to apply for a loan, if you wear a suit and tie, it's going to be a different type of loan than you're going to get if you go in some jeans and a t-shirt.
Very good.
If you go to If you go to apply for a car, if you go to purchase a vehicle, the way that you're treated when you walk in the door is going to be completely different if you have on a suit and tie compared to having on some jeans and a t-shirt, you know.
Yeah.
And those are lessons that I, especially as a Black kid, that I never forgot. People are going to read. There's this statement that you can't judge a book by its cover. And I'm sorry, but I call complete bullshit on that, because we all judge the book by the cover.
First impressions, yeah.
First impressions. And the book editors spend more money on the cover than they spend on editing, because they know that that cover is what you're going to see. You're not going to stand in Barnes and Nobles and flip through every chapter to see if you're interested in it, but you're going to pass by it. And if that cover looks good. So again, I'm just giving context, but to answer your question directly, for me, it's all about, I want to be comfortable, right? So bow ties is kind of my brand. Nice. And again, growing up, I would wear regular long ties, but as I would look at myself in pictures, I would always have this awkwardness, kind of this goofy look. And I realized the fact is that I'm 6'2", almost 6'3". Are
you? Okay, so, right.
So I'm a pretty big guy with big, broad shoulders, and I work out, right? So if you see that I'm the tallest person on every picture, and then my tie is this long. You know, so it would make it would make me look very awkward. So several years ago, I just completely switched my style to bow ties, which allows me to kind of accentuate what you're seeing right now. So essentially, my style is bow ties, colorful shirts. I love to have colorful shirts. And then I'll always wear some type of jacket that either goes against or with the color. It kind of depends. I'm known for my socks. I don't have any on right now, but I wear.
I was gonna say.
I wear very, very colorful socks. I probably have 100 pair of socks. I'm known for suspenders. I normally wear suspenders also.
Nice.
And I probably have a good 25 different hats, depending on the season and where we're going, et cetera, et cetera. But that's kind of my style. The bow tie, you know, again, colorful, and I aim to be colorful. I think probably because I have a colorful personality. I'm a very outgoing person, and I want my style to represent. Like, I could never be the person to wear all black. That looks really cool with some people, but my personality is just too. I'm too outgoing to just kind of be that subtle guy standing in the corner watching everybody. You know,
So at what age? Oh no. So go ahead.
No. Go.
Well, I was just wondering. So at what age did you? When was the shift from going, oh my gosh, my dad's so embarrassing with all his rings and he's so loud, to I kind of think this is cool and I want to emulate, you know, the style that my dad has. At what age was the switch?
I'd probably say college. I'd say college, because I went to Xavier University here in New Orleans, which again, it's a private Catholic university. So you have that conservative, again, I'm back in another conservative space, right? But I'm known on campus as a jazz musician. Again, I spent my summers in Europe, right? And I was pretty popular on campus as a musician. So when it was time to perform, etc., suddenly I pop up at the band concert, whether it's symphonic or jazz band, you know, and I have on these popping colors. I used to wear these old cab collarway type shoes, you know, the black and white wingtip shoes, and that used to be my style or whatever. But I just really began to just embrace what it means to be a jazz man, you know, what it means to walk into a room and to command authority, even before I pick up my instrument, even before I open my mouth, you know, when you walk in a room and people are like, who's that cat?
Right.
He's somebody.
Right.
And I remember we were traveling with Delphia Marcellus and the Uptown Jazz Orchestra. I'm one of the trumpeters and vocalists for that band also. And
I think I might have a clip in a second, I think, that I found. Yeah.
We were somewhere with that band, and I walked in a space. I can't remember exactly what it was, but I walked in and the guy stopped me. He said, I don't know who you are, and I don't know what you do, but you are somebody. I can clearly tell that. And I just stood there and laughed, you know, but you know, and again, a lot of it has to do with me being a black man. I'm sorry, a black American man. Let me say that. I
Yeah,
can't take
yeah.
that away because um I know that as a black American, 6'2", broad shoulders, people can't figure out if I'm a professional football player or a professional basketball player. Nobody thinks I'm a jazz trumpet player because I totally don't have the build. I have the build like I'm an athlete, you know.
Yeah.
So I know that I'm perceived a certain way in certain
Hmm.
spaces. So again, I am that much less, and it's a sad thing to say, but it's a real context. I
Hmm.
am that less of a threat if I'm walking down the street with a pair of $300 Cole Haan shoes and a bow tie and some suspenders compared to, you
Right.
know what I'm saying? It
Yep.
it does play a I'm sorry, and I have to admit that it does play a viable role. So all of those things go into context when you think about
Hmm.
what my fashion sensibilities are. And then on top
Yeah.
of that, I'm an entrepreneur. I'm a businessman. So when I walk in any space, my objective is to walk out with a contract,
Hmm.
checks,
Yeah.
you know, or some type of deal signed. Every meeting I walk in, that is the premise of me walking out, is with one of those three things. So I
Nice.
know the first thing to make a difference is going to be how I look and carry myself when I walk into that meeting.
Yeah. Do you give seminars on this? You should.
I give
There's,
informals. Just check out my Facebook Live on Monday through Friday.
yeah, right. Because oh man, that's amazing. So for in terms of second line, I mean, so I've had my one experience was this last April 2019. Went to New Orleans. Christopher Butcher said, you know, it's called Super Sunday, right? There's a second
Mhm.
line parade every Sunday in a different neighborhood. And so we went to this one. And so people are, you know, there is a different style in New Orleans, much different from North America. So can you explain like the relationship between being from New Orleans and the culture and the clothing? So now we know your story. And what about kind of the average person in New Orleans? Do people dress up for second line Sundays, or are they always that colorful? Or yeah, what's the story there?
So with the second line, so Super Sunday, so we have second line season. So second line
Okay, yeah,
season is spring. So they start around February, March.
yeah.
So you go from March to right up to June. At that point, New Orleans becomes 150 degrees every day for summertime. So there are no second lines during the summer. And then the second
Ah,
lines start again. There's a second season again in the fall. So
hmm,
they'll go from September through December, and then there's a small winter
hmm,
break. So there are two seasons. In the second lines, essentially, they are led by what's known as social aid and pleasure clubs, which are rooted in benevolent societies. Benevolent societies are private organizations, both black and white, but predominantly black organizations.
hmm.
Um, and essentially this goes back to, you know, right after slavery, right after the Emancipation Proclamation. You know, black folk were poor, didn't have insurance, didn't have ability to bury the dead, etc., didn't have the ability to take care of the sick. So you join a benevolent society. For instance, I'm a member of Young Men of Olympia, which is the oldest benevolent society in New Orleans, right?
Huh.
So you pay your monthly dues into that. And then if there's a time of sickness and or a time of death, essentially the benevolent society takes care of all of your needs for your family. You know, so they take care of your burial, etc. Now
Aha.
the second lines are done. It's a multiple prong. One, it has a lot to do with the church, the black churches in the communities, because every benevolent society or social aid pleasure club is connected to a church. They all have a church home. They also have a ballroom home. So
Ah,
everyone has their own Sunday, right? Each group has their own Sunday that they'll parade. And these guys and young ladies spend thousands. Essentially, the whole premise is the average black person, you're a laborer, you know, you're some type of professional. Unfortunately, many are like working class professionals, right? So
hmm,
you don't have much aspects of extravagant lifestyle type of thing.
hmm.
But now, as a member of the Social Aid and Pleasure Club, when you guys come out, they all wear matching suits. They
Yeah.
get sashes made. They have umbrellas. I mean, they're done to the nines. Alligator shoes that might cost $1,500 a pair. That is your day of glory. You're supposed to look the best that you can look on that day. So how does that relate to the average Joe or the average Joanne that's coming to the second line? The average Joe and average Joanne, they know that the second line, they're going to be looking good.
Oh,
so
yeah.
you're gonna come out there trying to look as good as you possibly can. Now, you're not trying to challenge them, but you want to look good. And with all of that said, New Orleans is a very social city. The majority of our events take place outdoors, right? The majority of our events are either formally or informally open to the public. But there will be some type of public and social interaction. So with that, you don't want to go out looking ragtag. You know, if you work at a hotel, or if you're a waiter, or you're a concierge during the week, you're in that space where you're wearing a laborer's type of uniform every day. So now when you go out on that Sunday, I'm dressed to the nines, baby. I'm gonna outdo the preacher, you know. So there is that sense of like almost a social expectation that you're gonna look good when you step out of your house. And it's a true Black New Orleans thing. You're gonna look good when you step out of your house.
Very nice. Okay, so I've got so many questions. The social club. So first of all, the one you belong to, what was the name of that one again?
It's the Young Men of Olympia Social Aid and Benevolent Society.
Now, is that for men only or for both?
The divisions of men. It's a men's social aid and pleasure club.
Okay, so that sparks another question. So are there clubs that are only for women? So there's men's clubs, are there women's clubs, and there would be co-ed clubs as well, I'd imagine?
There are a few co-eds. There are several all-female social aid pleasure clubs. The majority are male-centric social aid pleasure clubs. And there are a few. Now, each of these clubs will always have a children's division. That's a way of perpetuating the culture and passing the culture on to future generations. And the children's divisions are pretty much always co-ed.
Okay.
But it really, it depends on the social aid and pleasure club themselves. You know, it depends on when they were founded, how they were founded, why they were founded. Again, you have, I want to say the Young Men of Olympia, I want to say just celebrated 132 years or something like that in 2019. So, whereas you have some that may have started 3 years ago. So of course, the practices and the traditions of the older social aid and pleasure clubs are going to be much different from the younger ones, or the newer ones, I should say.
Yeah, that's what I've heard. I think I saw the, correct me if I'm wrong, was it the Pigeon-Toed Steppers?
Pigeon-Town Steppers.
Thank you, Pigeon-Town Steppers. Yeah. So the weekend that I was there, that was the club that was leading the second line, and it was a great outfits. Their colors were, if I'm not wrong, were like orange and bright green, and lots of feathers. So that comes from the Indians, right? There's a lot of feathers in the costumes. Did you want to talk about that?
Well, it's a part. The feathers are part of the Mardi Gras Indian tradition, but and this is something of my newer research, because my family and I went to the Bahamas last spring, and for the first time we were on the beach, just chilling, relaxing. The kids are swimming and stuff, and suddenly I hear this music. It sounds like a second line.
That's right.
And I start looking around. I'm like, what if, you know, am I sick? What's really going on? So I see all the people start moving and stuff, and it's a Bahamian brass band, right?
Yeah.
And they are dressed very colorful.
Yep.
Exact same setup as a New Orleans brass band. There were two trumpets, a tuba, baritone. They didn't have a trombone. They had two baritones. Instead of having a bass drum, they used a hollowed out steel drum, like for oil. But their outfits, essentially their clothing attire, was all accentuated with feathers, what we call Mardi Gras Indian feathers, but like ostrich feathers. And they were on their arms, they were on their legs, they were around their waist. And we had seen several like statues on the way to the beach that were essentially, they almost looked like Mardi Gras Indians, right? So that made me start looking deeper into Jamaican culture, Bahamian culture, Trinidadian culture. And essentially it's a Caribbean cultural manifestation of having the colorful outfits and the beadwork and the feathers. And for so long, I think many people kind of attributed that to it's a New Orleans thing. All of this comes from New Orleans, but in actuality, it's a Caribbean tradition. And of course, as we know, during the slave trade, before they got to New Orleans, before they got to America, they stopped in the Caribbeans, and then the next stop from the Caribbeans was La Belle New Orleans, New Orleans. You know,
yeah, my cousin. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say, so the Pigeon Town Steppers, that mean that it was probably Father's Day weekend that you were here. And also the Pigeon Town Steppers are actually based in my community. I live in Carrollton. So there's a community in Carrollton that's called Pigeon Town, is what it's known as. And that's where they're rooted from. And each of the social aid and pleasure clubs are rooted, again, from some particular neighborhood. If it's the 9th Ward or the lower 9th Ward or 7th Ward Steppers, the 6th Ward Steppers or something like that. Most of them are all rooted in some community.
Yeah. So I mean, to me, it was just mind-boggling how many people were out. It went from about 1 p.m. until 5 p.m. We were with my parents, so we didn't, do the whole thing, but it was incredible. It was really incredible. And I was wondering, so how many people, is it such a big part of the culture that 100% of the people from New Orleans participate, or would you say 50%, or the younger ones don't do it as much as you know what I mean? Because it was the real deal. It wasn't a touristy thing that we saw. We were in a neighborhood. We were there. We were some of the few tourists that were actually there, and it was just incredible. And then I'm finding out this is every Sunday this is happening. So is it, do your kids, well, I know your kids aren't really kids anymore, right? They're grown, they're older, but is that something they would do on a Sunday, or?
It's something I would pull them out to do, but it's not something they're interested in doing at all.
Right.
It's kind of different. Again, I grew up with my dad. I grew up going to the second lines and then eventually performing second lines. So again, from about the 9th grade up until I graduated from college, and even after college, I literally played second lines almost every Sunday. Wow. Almost every Sunday. If not, at least every other Sunday, right? And that's just how popular the second lines are. In terms of people, yeah, I mean, there are thousands. There could be from, a large number of hundreds, 700, 800 people to thousands of people, depending on depending on the organization themselves. The organization, they're their own brand, they're their own pool, right? So they do balls, they do picnics, they do festivals. So they do events to attract people to their brand, to attract people to their actual parade, right? So it's not just like, oh, there's a parade up there, so we're going to go to it. No, what is it that's going to make this parade special? Which is one of the reasons that in terms of the outfits, right? So each social aid pleasure club, they're actually trying to outdress one another. That's the way that they actually challenge. They challenge they challenge by outdressing one another. So this group has some black loafers. Well, this group has a 4-colored loafer. Well, this group has, a single colored alligator tip. Well, this group has a tricolored alligator, and it just goes on and on and on and on to see who can outdress, and who can have the biggest bands, who can have the most bands, also who can have the most divisions. So each group has several divisions within the overall social aid and pleasure, or the overall benevolent society, right? So one group might have one division, such as the Young Men of Olympia. I think Young Men of Olympia may have like 8 divisions, right? So that means you have 8 bands. You have a different band for each division. That's a lot of people, So
that is.
Yeah, that's a lot of people. So one, they're trying to outdo one another. Your other question in terms of, do 100% of people in the city go to second lines, et cetera? No. So again, there's certain populations that are attracted to that. There's certain populations that stay away from it. Let it be known that the second lines, these particular second lines, they're not commercial. They are truly rooted within the community. They're specifically for those people within the community, which, like you said, you didn't see a lot of tourists. You're not going to see a lot of tourists. The routes are formal, yet the routes are informal. The routes can change at any time. You know, essentially they go from ballroom to ballroom within a community. That's where they stop to get drinks, to get a rest, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
So there's also research, like there's a researcher, Helen Regis. She's a Caucasian researcher, not originally from New Orleans, but lived in New Orleans for many, many years. And she wrote a book, and she talks about the fact that actually very few white people have actually attended a real, authentic second line in New Orleans. And again, they're rooted within the Black community. So right after Hurricane Katrina, suddenly there was kind of this appropriation thing taking place where you started seeing a lot of non-minority people at the second lines. It started, you started having organizations that were like broadcasting the route of the second line and broadcasting where the second line was. And it got a lot of pushback for the simple reason, these are grassroots, community-rooted, orientated organizations, right? They don't want commercials on popular radio saying, hey, we're going to start at Big Man's Lounge at 12 o'clock. Be there tomorrow. Because if you ain't supposed to be, if you're supposed to be there, you have the information.
You'll know.
Exactly. If you're supposed to be there, you'll know, or you'll know someone who knows. But it's not something that you look at the evening news. Exactly. It's not something that you look at the evening news and like, hey, so it's not like a Mardi Gras parade where this is the route, get your ladder, stand on the sideline. There are people selling pop. You know, it doesn't work that way. You know,
it was Christopher Butcher who let us know actually where it was.
Butcher has been able to embrace himself within the culture to be a Canadian. He's done a great job.
It's excellent. Another question about, and then back to the fashion, because you brought up something and it's perfect for what we need for here in Canada during COVID and the next couple of, well, we're in lockdown, just so you know, we found out yesterday we're officially in lockdown here where I live until the end of June. So we're limited to, I mean, we can still go out and do shopping and certain things, but we're still limited to gatherings of only 5 people at a time. So, looking at ways to celebrate our summer Mardi Gras, but from home. But before I get to that, I was going to ask, so you said your social club has 8 divisions. Yeah, my big question was, how many members in your social club then? Like several hundred or?
Yeah, it's a good number. And then, I mean, you have individuals who, how can I say it? You have individuals who are very loyal and like on the boards and on the different committees, et cetera, et cetera. And then you have, unfortunately, I hate to say it, but you have members like me who I'm just so busy, I'm engaged on the peripheral, but not as much as I would like to be. So, again, it just depends. And that's the same, it's almost like our, so it just kind of depends on individual schedules, individuals' lives, what they have going on. I'm also a member of Zulu Social Aid and Pleasure Club. So Zulu is the Black parading, actual Mardi Gras parading organization, the oldest African-American Black parading organization in New Orleans. And my family goes back like 60 plus years in Zulu. My dad was a member of Zulu. My parent was a member of Zulu. I have uncles who are in Zulu, and it's one of those things. My dad had been pulling me, man, you should join. I'm like, man, I'm too busy to join. But then in 2010, my dad had a stroke and, it kind of limited his mobility. So when I moved back to New Orleans in 2012 from Tuscaloosa, Alabama, where I was a professor at the University of Alabama, I decided to go ahead and join the Zulus just to continue that tradition that my family has always had with that organization. So again, with Zulu, you have your primary members, you have people who pay just to ride in a carnival parade, you have people who pay just to attend the balls and the parties and things like that. So it kind of depends on, it provides flexibility in depending on what your lifestyle is and what's going on with your life. So for me, blessedly, until this COVID thing slowed me down, I'm a very busy person. Between teaching, I have a nonprofit, so I still do teaching stuff. I essentially gave up all of my academic appointments, my university appointments to really just pursue my music 100% and give 100% of myself to my company. So I'm running multiple companies. I play with multiple bands. I run several of my own bands. I travel with different bands. I have a wife. We celebrate we're 19 years deep. We celebrate 20 years this September. I have
Nice.
4 kids, a 13-year-old daughter, a 15-year-old son, a 24-year-old daughter who's actually associate producer for CBS Morning News in New York. And I have a 26-year-old who is a kindergarten teacher out in Atlanta, right? So, and I have my wife, she's a nurse, so she's highly stressed out because she's wakes up every day and saves people's lives for 8 to 10 hours a day. So we have a lot going on. So for me to really like share my time and be sure that I give the appropriate amount of time, because on top of all of that, I'm daddy daycare. If I'm in town, I do all responsibilities for the children. I bring them to school, I pick them up from school, I go to PTA meetings, I coach on all of they play soccer and different sports. I chaperone with the band, you know. So with that schedule, it doesn't allow me to like participate in Zulu in ways that I really want to. It doesn't allow me to participate with Young Men of Olympia in ways that I would really want to. But I still give my energies when available. I still participate when I'm available. And that's the flexibility that those organizations provide. And at the same time, they provide fraternal fellowshipping, specifically again for Black men.
Wow. So thank you so much for all of this insight to your culture, because it's very rich. And a lot of us don't know about all of this. It's and so you were saying, another question came up. You pay for certain things. So you do pay, is some groups you would pay an annual membership, or just to, you said like you said, to do some balls or certain parties and events? Yeah,
it depends on what your level is. So like for instance, with Zulu, I have an annual due that I have to pay, and it's split up in months, of course, you know. So every other month or whatever, you make a payment. But then if I want to ride on the float for a parade for Mardi Gras, so Zulu parades on Mardi Gras Day. So if I want to actually be on the float, then I have to pay for that. So that's a separate fee that I pay to be on the float, depending on what float I want to be on and who I want to parade with. Because Zulu has divisions. They're given different names, but they have divisions, right? And Zulu has something like 20 divisions, something like that, something crazy.
Wow.
You know, Zulu has a big Mardi Gras ball that they do every year. You know, you have something like 100,000 people that attend their Mardi Gras ball. You know, so you pay separately for that. You know, so but again, it allows that flexibility. So essentially, it's almost like you pay to play, depending on what level you want to be in and how much you want to engage. And that'll, you know, again, the majority of members are working class members. So, you know, every little bit, you know, in a city like New Orleans, every little bit matters. It's not like these organizations are populated with lawyers and doctors and, you know, entrepreneurs and just people just with endless amounts of money. And the whole premise is for the average Joe, you know, working class and poor working class individuals to be able to participate in these organizations, to have fraternal opportunities, to have fellowshipping, and again, to have your one day of glory where you walking through the streets or parade through the streets of the city and all eyes are on you.
Nice. So what if somebody has no extra funds? Are there any organizations that still do parades or have events for people who can't pay? Or is it just very affordable? Is it just
no, it's very expensive. It's very expensive. And for people who it's very expensive. So my wife parades in an all-female Mardi Gras organization, you know. So we as a family, my mom parades in an all-female organization. My second oldest daughter just joined the organization with my wife. So, you know, we pay a pretty good amount of money. You know, we save, let me say this, we save a good amount of money to be able to enjoy those forms of social celebration. For people who can't afford it, then, you know, that's what spectatorship is all about. That's the second line in our spectatorship, you know.
Right. So you can still, so that's the answer then. Yeah. So you can still be behind in the second line dancing and come out in your own outfit. Gotcha. But just not as part of the society. Wow. Okay. So to wrap it up with the whole fashion part, when you were talking about, it's kind of like dressing up and outdoing the other one, right? So kind of like this competition of like, look at our outfits. So in our situation, in that we're, wanting to celebrate the culture of New Orleans here, but now there's COVID upon us. So our whole idea with the sessions is to say to people, we might be in lockdown, or we might only be able to have an event with 50 people. And if there's 300 that want to come, they can't all come. So what do we do to celebrate at home? And I love when you started to say about this, look at our look and our shoes and our outfits, because what's happening here in Canada and well, in Canada, where I live, because we're kind of rural, we're not in a big city. So the street I live on, and a lot of the streets out here in St. Catharines, you've got your neighbors, you've got your front yard, your neighbors, and a lot of people are doing social distance hangs with their neighbors. So they'll put their chairs on their lawn and they can talk with their neighbors. You can hear, you're not far enough to touch, but you can still hear each other. And that's kind of like the new norm to kind of stay sane. So I love what you're saying about getting dressed up for Mardi Gras. So in our bubbles, as it were, we can come up with our look and then maybe go out to our neighbors and say, hey, what you got, and that'll be really fun. So thank you for that. I mean, it's just such a rich culture, and it's so nice for us to learn more about it. And this is session number 3. And between you and Christopher, we've gotten a lot of the history of New Orleans and jazz. And then with Austin, we had the masks, and now we're going to dive into some Cajun cooking and some classic cocktails. So, some of the sessions are in New Orleans and some of them are up here in Canada. And it's just getting us really excited. And also just, thank you for sharing and letting us have something to do while we're in lockdown, and something to learn about, and something different than Netflix or, the books we're reading. It's just, and also to have this kind of connection, even though it's not, we can't touch each other, but, there's a conversation going more than these emails and more than being on Facebook that we all are. It's really wonderful. So thank you so much for that. And I have a couple of clips so that I'd love to play, and then maybe they're really short ones that I've kind of fished off the Facebook and there of you. I believe just by looking at the lighting from when I was in New Orleans, I think there's a couple of clips of you at Snug Harbor, I believe. So may I play them and then you tell us a little bit about them?
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, great. I think we might. Oh yeah, we might be a little bit over time, but we're having so much fun. So we'll probably wrap it up in a few minutes, but thank you so much. Okay, so there's 2 clips, and I'm gonna play this one first. So here we go. Did you want to tell us a little bit about that clip? Can you hear us?
I don't know who that guy was, but that was a handsome gentleman. Sounded good on that trumpet too.
It sounded very good. Is that at Snug Harbor?
That's at Snug Harbor. That's every Wednesday with Delphia Marcellus and the Uptown Jazz Orchestra. It shows at 8 and 10 p.m. Pre-COVID.
Pre-COVID, yeah.
And that's 18 people on stage.
18 people on stage, because Snug Harbor is pretty tiny. Like, what is it, 40 people on the lower level and like 30 on top type thing? Yeah,
it's a very small club, very small stage, and that's 18 people on stage every Wednesday.
Wow. And here's another clip I just wanted to throw in. So I think it's also at Snug Harbor with you leading the crowd.
Are y'all ready to have a good time here tonight, New Orleans, y'all? Are y'all ready to have a good time tonight in New Orleans, y'all? Everybody, put your right foot forward. Put your left to the rear. Put your right foot forward. We gonna party up in here. Put your right foot forward. Put your left to the rear. Put your right foot forward. We about to party up in here. Everybody come on. Hey, welcome to New Orleans. Everybody come on. Hey.
Wow. And that's also on a Wednesday night? Hey!
Welcome to New Orleans, baby. Put your right foot forward.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that's one of my that's one of the theme songs. So I'm with not only Uptown Jazz Orchestra, I'm kind of known. What makes me different as a jazz musician, I grew up on hip hop, right? So don't get it twisted at all. Tupac, Two Live Crew, NWA, Nas, today, Kendrick Lamar, J. Cole. I'm a hip hop head. I'm a hip hop fanatic, but I'm this jazz guy. And something I've always done and that goes into my style also, because something I've always done is how do I blur the line between hip hop and jazz, right? They're one and the same, yet they're different. In terms of engagement with audiences, they're one and the same, and yet they're different. So not only with Uptown Jazz Orchestra, but even with my own groups, I'm essentially kind of known as a hype man within jazz, right? So I'm known for getting the party going. I'm known for the improvised raps. And I actually write a lot of songs. So that's a song, that's an old second line, I should say a popular street second line song called Put Your Right Foot Forward. And what I did for the band was essentially change the lyrics to Welcome to New Orleans. So put your right foot forward. It normally says, put your right foot forward, put your left to the rear, put your right foot forward, get on up out of here, something like that. And I changed it to put your right foot forward, put your left to the rear, hey, welcome to New Orleans. So it's become one of our theme songs, no matter where we go. There's another song that's on a new CD with Uptown Jazz Orchestra that I wrote called I'm So New Orleans.
I saw a clip of that, yes.
Yeah, so it's like a jazz rap, but just talking about all the cool things that make and has made New Orleans the unique city that it is culturally, So again, just going into like my fashion sensibilities, being that hype man, being the guy who wants to get the audience, being the guy who wants to get the audience jumping, being the guy who wants to get the audience going, the way that I look is going to play a vital role in terms of how people interact.
Nice. Okay, so I've got an idea now. What I think we need to do is we need to get people to take photos of their outfits and post them on our Facebook page, and maybe we'll have to have some sort of a contest and a little prize. See who can emulate Dr. Brice Miller's look. Huh? What do you think? and then we'll have to have you back, and we'll have to pull in the winner, even if we have to do it on StreamYard. And then they can show their outfit. That's what we're gonna do. I'm gonna work on that. That's exactly what we're gonna do. Right? And then when we're done with all this COVID, we're gonna get you to come up here and you can meet everybody, because that's what we really want. But this is the next best thing for now. Well, yeah. Well, thank you. And just so everybody knows, Dr. Brice Miller is gonna, because he books bands as well, he's gonna help us bring in virtually this year a band from New Orleans for our Niagara's Summer Mardi Gras on July 18th. So we'll do whatever we do out here, depending on what the situation is. There'll be a lot of live streaming, and then we'll bring in a band that will commission through you. So pretty excited about that, and listening to some of the clips and getting a dose of the real deal. So thank you.
Let's do it.
Yeah, let's do it. So thanks so much. I'm just going to say bye to everybody, and I'll come back and see you. So thanks again, Dr. Brice, for joining us, and stay safe. Yeah, right back at you. And we hope to have you back again, because this was really great. We learned so much, and you're such a big personality. And thank you for sharing all of that with us. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, guys.
That was Dr. Brice Miller, everyone, live from New Orleans. And I know I went a little bit over time, but I kind of knew we might after having spoken with Dr. Brice yesterday for 2 hours. Just so much. There's so much to that gentleman. I don't think we even touched on the fact he has the equivalent of 3 PhDs. He's just so well-rounded, and the culture is so rich, and it's great to learn so much about it. I do apologize that we couldn't show our video of our sponsor, Dan Plunkett, but let me pull up Dan's banner, his slide right there. So once again, a huge thanks to Dan Plunkett of Deep Blue Music for sponsoring this event. And if you would like to sponsor one of our events, you can definitely do so. You can email sponsorship@NiagaraJazzFestival.com. Next week, we have another fun session. Let me just play you this great little promo that Karina did for us. Here it is. Thanks to Karina for that great clip. So next Tuesday, we'll be back to Tuesdays again, 6 p.m. until 7 p.m. will be musical spoons workshop and jug band with the vaudevillians. So you can grab stuff around your house to make music with and just a regular pair of spoons. And they're going to teach me a few things and we'll do it all together and it'll be a lot of fun. And then we've got our live streaming this weekend as well. So on Friday, we have the Richmore Duo and we have a surprise guest coming on Saturday. So those shows are from 7 until 8 o'clock. I think I've said everything. I'm going to leave you with our little promo video so you can get excited about all of the other sessions. Thanks once again to Dr. Brice Miller for a great session on funky fashion, but so much more as well, just with the history of jazz music and New Orleans. And stay safe, everyone, and we'll see you on Friday.
The TD Niagara Jazz Festival presents Niagara's Summer Mardi Gras Sessions. Join us online every Tuesday from 6 to 7 p.m. as we bring New Orleans to the north. Direct from the Crescent City, Dancin Man 504, Windex Pete, Christopher Butcher of the Heavyweights Brass Band, and more. Featuring mask making, Cajun cooking demos, musical spoons, second line dance steps, cocktail demos, funky fashion tips, and musical clips. Tune in for these free sessions on our Facebook or YouTube channels, Jazz Niagara. Then we'll celebrate Niagara's Summer Mardi Gras together this summer on July 18th. It's virtually possible. Just watch and see.
Niagara's Summer Mardi Gras sessions are brought to you in part by TD, the City of St. Catharines, and the town of Niagara on the Lake.